I think that we're good to go. All right, welcome everyone. So this is our kickoff informational meeting for BRIC 2022. Yes, I know it's the year 2024 already, but this is BRIC 2022 when the NOFO came out for us to apply for the funding on behalf of our Vermont communities. This funding is for updating or creating. We'll go to our next slide. And if someone could help me make sure that we're letting people in as they come in, that'd be great. All right, so our agenda today, we'll be talking a little bit about project timeline, why we're doing this, and a little bit about next steps, including executing agreements and reimbursement requests, procuring a consultant, and planning, approval, and adoption of plans. So give you a good overview of what's going to happen. So our timeline is, so back in January 2023, we applied to FEMA for this funding on behalf of the communities that needed to update or create a new plan. We were awarded the funding in November, and we began our outreach to get everyone on board from our priority communities. So going forward, we'll be doing this kickoff. We'll get agreements settled between DPS and municipalities. You'll be hiring a consultant and begin your planning process, and everything will be finished up by November 2026. And Ben, I think you have a question.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. I apologize if this is redundant and everybody already knows this very well, but it occurred that it might be worth just a 2-sentence elevator pitch on why we do this and what's at stake for communities. I mean, I guess people already know because they showed up, but
Not necessarily. Yeah.
All right, well, let me just say at like high level, if I was talking to a legislator about why are we going through all of this planning stuff, it's because FEMA requires a community to have a FEMA approved local hazard mitigation plan in order to be eligible for FEMA hazard mitigation assistance grants. And in the coming year and a half, we're going to have over $100 million of various flavors of federal hazard mitigation funding to use to do mitigation projects. And only the communities that have a plan in place by the time their application can't be approved unless there's a local hazard mitigation plan in place. And FEMA has very specific requirements for what has to be included in a hazard mitigation plan. And this great team will help you check all those boxes, but it takes time and effort. It's a high bar to get a local hazard mitigation plan. And so we're trying to get funding to communities to do that work through the available FEMA funding rounds. Full stop.
I appreciate that, Ben. Thank you.
Please put a finer point on that, Caroline, but that's just like the context of why we're going through this.
Yeah, I find your input always motivational and inspiring. So I did put a couple slides in, or one slide in here about why plan. So as Ben was stating, so this does help with eligibility of for funding. We use hazard mitigation planning to figure out our path forward for being more resilient to hazards. We're facing more frequent, more intense hazards. It's more important than ever. So it's really going to help you understand what your risks are, what your vulnerabilities are, and what you can do about it. As Ben was mentioning, it's required for eligibility for the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program from FEMA and the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant Program, which this is a planning grant. It's the only thing that you're eligible for under the BRIC program without a plan in place. Additionally, it helps you qualify for state assistance after a disaster to meet that local match requirement for public assistance grants from FEMA. So we increase the percentage of state assistance if you have a local hazard mitigation plan in place and a few other steps. So you can learn more about the ERAF program on Flood Ready. And when I send out these slides, these links will work for you. Okay, so I am going to ask Lisa to jump in and we're going to talk about executing agreements and future reimbursement requests.
Great, thank you. I'm assuming, Caroline, you'll keep the slides moving?
Yes, just tell me next.
Okay. All right, great. So hello, everybody. I'm really just want to give a brief overview. For some of you, you might already have connected with Aldiana and have already started on some of the subgrant agreement process. I do also want to let you know everything we're going to review in this part, you're going to see again. The slides will be available and Aldiana will be able to assist with any specific questions. So again, just a high level right now. So there are certain backup items that we need you to take care of in order to have the subgrant agreement in place. One is completing the risk survey. And we're going to go over that in the next slide in a minute. You're also going to provide a certificate of liability insurance, naming DPS as one of the additional insureds. And once those components and other items that will be Aldiana will ask for, then she will produce the subgrant agreement, which will have all the details of the award. That goes to the town signs, sends back to DPS. It is signed on our end, then it is fully executed, and you get a free copy of the fully executed agreement for your file. Okay, so going on to one of the items, Caroline, next, please, is the risk survey. Again, there's a lot of information here. We don't so much want you to worry about the nitty gritty right now, but when you go in and do the risk survey, and Aldiana will send you a link to that survey as part of the backup documentation collection, it will ask some general information about your town. Couple of things we do want to highlight. Next, please. I never get to do this. I feel like the Vanna White of PowerPoint right now, but you will need your UEI number. So please make sure that you have that. It is something that's asked for. And then again, general information about your fiscal year, your location, address, phone number. Next, please. This is the fun part. The survey will ask some information about your accounting system and any audits that you've done. Again, just make sure that you can look at the survey and go gather your information and come back and fill out the survey. Next, please. One of the questions that you will be asked to respond to asks about a variety of different policies. And I do want to make note that there are two policies that you are required to have in order to move to the subgrant agreement execution. That is written purchasing procedures and written conflict of interest policy that adheres to 2 CFR 200.318. So the others are important, but they're not required. So you will still report out on those policies. But if you have the purchasing procedure and the conflict of interest policy, prior to filling out the risk survey and you can mark yes, then you've checked off that requirement. If you do not have those in place, and when you do the risk survey, you make note that you don't have those two required policies, then what happens is before we can enter into the subgrant agreement, financial monitoring at DPS will reach out to you. And it's called risk monitoring, or compliance monitoring, which sounds a little scary, but it's not. They are wonderful people who will help you draft policies in line with 2 CFR 200 in order to fulfill that requirement. So again, if you don't have them at the time that you're filling out the risk survey and you have to mark no, then we will reach out to you for those next steps. It will add some additional time before we can move to subgrant agreement, but at the end, you will have those policies that you can use forever and ever or until the CFR changes, okay? Next, please. So when you've fulfilled all of those requirements and you move to the subgrant agreement and you have a copy of the fully executed subgrant agreement, Aldiana will also send a reimbursement request that you will use for all of your reimbursements under the grant. When you get ready to do reimbursements, that's a good time if you have specific questions to reach out to Aldiana. Generally speaking, include the documentation for the expenditures, so that would be invoices, the charges, as well as proof of payment of all expenses, including match. Okay, so invoice and then supporting documentation showing that those items were paid. Financial reimbursements requests should be submitted no later than the end of the month following the month in which the expenditures were incurred and of course paid, because you do need that proof of payment. Number one, we want to make sure that you're being reimbursed in a timely manner. Number two, it is a grant requirement, and it is one of the items that FEMA tracks along the way. Are we spending money down on the grants? And number three, especially for your first reimbursement, we want to make sure that if there's any questions, any assistance that we can give you, we give you in the first reimbursement close to the time that everything is occurring, and not 6 months down the line when you've incurred more expenses. But again, the reimbursement form is pretty user-friendly. Any specific questions, you can ask Aldiana. And next. Okay, in-kind tracking form. After your subgrant agreement is fully executed, along with the financial reimbursement form, you'll get an in-kind tracking form. And I'm just going to read this off, that they'll be sent when the agreements are executed. You submit these in-kind tracking forms to count time spent by staff and volunteers on the plan toward your local match. You use the GSA approved mileage reimbursement rate, the government rate, and use independentsector.org to determine volunteer rate. Be sure to do this at the time of the meeting to ensure correct rates. One comment on this: when you fill this form out, fill it out completely. If there's a space that needs to be filled out, please make sure that there's information in there. That is one of the things that does get looked at closeout by FEMA. Second, that independentsector.org volunteer rate, please make sure that you're updating that every year. The form, I believe, and Caroline can correct me, I believe comes pre-populated with the most recent year's rate. But for next year, you want to make sure you update that. Number one, you want to make sure that you're fully compensated at what should be the higher rate when those rates change. And number two, that is a question that does come up at closeout with FEMA. Again, any questions? Aldiana should be able to answer most from the finance side. If not, she'll be able to send you back to us on any programmatic questions on the in-kind tracking. Next, please. I don't know if we have anything else. Oh, yeah. One last item. The last fun part is we do quarterly reporting. It is a programmatic quarterly report. So what'll happen is Matt will send out ahead of time a link to the Microsoft form, which takes on average about 3 minutes to fill out. It's not very arduous at all. And that's just gives you the opportunity. Number one, we are required to report back out to FEMA on the grant as a whole. We also want to make sure that we're keeping up to date with any challenges as well as any successes that you've had. But again, we send out, it's January, April, October. No, I'm missing a month there. Every 3 months starting in January. But we will send you a reminder on that. So again, brief overview, Aldiana will contact everybody that we have on our list that said that they were ready to start on the subgrant agreement process, and you will see all of this information again, and she will be able to answer any specific questions, both at that time and as she's on the call today. So I think that's all I have, Caroline. I know that's a lot, but I'm done.
Yeah, it is a lot, and we understand that this is a big lift, but we are here to support you. So definitely reach out as you're going through this process and ask as many questions as you need. So I want to talk a little bit about hiring a planning consultant really briefly. This is, once you get through this step, your planning consultant will walk you through the planning process, and you can kind of sit back and do what they tell you to do. So, all right. So once you have your plan, your grant executed, you go out to bid. And because it's a FEMA grant, we do have to go through a competitive bid process. This is considered a small purchase. It's over $10,000, but under $250,000. There's all kinds of resources out there for guidance, but in a nutshell, we recommend that you use the Vermont Business Registry to make that a public bid. We provide that RFP template for you to use. It has the standards that you're looking for in a planning consultant, experience, etc. What you're looking for from that consultant, and you can use that as your selection criteria. So you will see these slides again. I will share this, and we'll send out more guidance as we go, but this is a brief overview of what that looks like. So you do need to follow federal, state, and local procurement requirements. That means, giving opportunity to small businesses, minority businesses, women-owned businesses, and labor surplus area firm. I hope that everyone is pretty familiar with these, but if you're not, again, reach out. We will send these slides out and go through what you need to do. Again, as Lisa had mentioned, we do have the audit team. Don't be intimidated by the name. They are here to help you, and they can answer more specific questions and help you through these policies. Okay, so let's jump over to planning, approval, and adoption to give you a full picture of what the process will look like. Okay, so where we are now is at secure funding. I know there's a lot of words. I do want to share these. So we have secured the funding. We need to execute agreements, and then we can move on to the plan drafting step. Once the plan is drafted, you submit the plan for review to us, and we review that plan on behalf of FEMA. We do need to meet the FEMA requirements. Those are national requirements. They can be a bit of a hassle, but again, we're here to help through that process, and your consultant will be helping you. They should have the experience and knowledge necessary to meet those requirements. So, but it is very, very common that there will be some requested revisions. So make sure that there's some budget left over for that. And once the revisions are completed, we resubmit the plan, and then we issue approval pending adoption. At that point, the municipality can adopt the plan and then resubmit it for approval, and we'll issue that approval on behalf of FEMA. We will let FEMA know that the plan has been approved, and they'll issue the formal approval letter. At that point, it's about implementing the plan and the mitigation actions that you've identified within that plan and maintaining it over the 5-year cycle, because the plan expires every 5 years. And that brings us to our conclusion. So if you have not already expressed interest in pursuing the funding, please reach out to Matt. All of the questions can come to me. And if it has to do with finance and the DPS risk survey, which you will hear about after you express interest, you can reach out to Aldiana. There's more information on what a local hazard mitigation plan is in Vermont at the link on this slide. Again, I will share it, and more planning resources at the link below that if you want to learn more. I'm going to stop recording so that anyone can ask some questions.